They say you can feel when something breaks in a relationship. A shift in temperature. The long silences that stretch too long. The way a hug starts to feel like obligation. But honestly, I didn't feel it. Not at first. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I was too locked into routine, wake up at 6:30, black coffee, check server security logs, kiss Rachel on the forehead as she scrolled through her phone without looking up. Work. Gym. Dinner in front of the TV. Pretend not to notice her checking her messages with that little smile that wasn't for me. We'd been married for 9 years. Together for 12. I thought we were settled. Not bored, just grown up. Mature love? Less fireworks, more fireplace. But people don't always crave warmth. Sometimes they want to feel the burn. The message came on a Tuesday. I remember because I was in a meeting watching my junior devs argue about a permissions vulnerability when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a grocery list or something about dinner. Instead, I saw, "We need to talk. I'm not happy and haven't been for a long time. I think we should separate." That was it. No greeting. No punctuation even. Not a call. Not even a damn voice memo. Just a message. Like it was a reschedule. Like I was a dentist appointment she didn't want to go to. I left the meeting without a word, walked out of the office and into the parking lot and sat in my car for a full hour with the engine running. I must have reread the text 50 times. Each time hoping another message would follow. Something that said, "Just kidding," or "I'm having a rough day." But there was nothing. Silence. Except for the sound of my heart punching my ribs. I called her. No answer. I texted back asking what was going on. I kept it calm. Kept it measured. She replied 2 hours later. "I've been staying with a friend. I need space. Please respect that." I went home. Half the closet was empty. My laptop was gone. So was the photo of us from Santorini that had sat on her nightstand for years. The one where we were both sunburned and stupidly happy. Vanished like it never happened. Her wedding ring? Left behind in the soap dish. A punctuation mark. That night, I made myself pasta and didn't eat it. I drank half a bottle of wine I didn't remember opening. Sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV, waiting for answers that wouldn't come. Around midnight, I grabbed my laptop. Something about the way she said a friend not at me. The vagueness. The detachment. Rachel wasn't cold, not by nature. This wasn't her. I opened up our shared cloud account. The one she probably forgot we still had linked. And that's when the story changed. There it was, an Instagram story set to private that she'd somehow made public for a few minutes before deleting it. A boomerang. Cute little loop. Her on a balcony holding a wine glass. Eiffel Tower in the background. Another hand in frame, his brushing her hair from her cheek. She laughs. Leans into him. He kisses her temple. I paused it. Zoomed in. My stomach dropped. It was Eric. Of all people, Eric. Eric was a mutual from college. We were tight once. Shared a dorm, shared a dozen drunken nights and 1,000 jokes. I hadn't talked to him in years. Last I heard, he was doing consulting work out of Chicago. A perpetual bachelor. Charmer. Snake with a smile. And now apparently Rachel's new friend. That was the moment the hurt cracked into something else. Not rage. Not yet. But something colder. Something quiet. Something that said, this isn't the end of the story. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift with the headlights passing outside. My body was still. My mind was a live wire, buzzing with pieces that didn't fit: her distance, the late nights, the guarded phone, the vacation days she said she couldn't take because of work. Turns out she just took them with someone else. I got up around 4 a.m., made coffee I didn't want, and opened the laptop again. The cloud account was still connected: Google Photos, calendar entries, location pings from her phone. She wasn't careful. Most cheaters aren't. They get cocky, forgetful. She never expected I'd go looking. That was her first mistake. She'd booked the Paris trip a month ago. Not through our joint account, through a second credit card I'd forgotten existed. But the itinerary was synced to her Gmail, and her Gmail was still linked to my browser profile. I pulled the whole trip: flight confirmations, hotel stays, even dinner reservations. Rachel wasn't crashing at a friend's place. She was in Paris with Eric, drinking champagne under fairy lights and calling it closure for a marriage she'd never had the decency to discuss. There was more. Photos. Dozens of them. Him with his arms around her waist. Her on his lap. A selfie in bed. They weren't hiding. They weren't even being discreet. That told me everything I needed to know. She didn't leave because she was confused. She didn't need space. She had a plan. One that didn't include me. And yet, despite all of it, I didn't throw my laptop across the room. I didn't scream. I didn't text her some angry monologue demanding answers. Because I knew answers wouldn't come. I'd worked in cybersecurity long enough to know something more important than revenge, the element of surprise. Emotion makes people sloppy. It gives them cover. But silence? Silence makes them nervous. So I went quiet. Over the next week, I collected data like a forensic analyst, emails, screenshots, financial records. I dug into Eric's professional history and found he'd recently launched a consultancy firm with a pitch deck eerily similar to a client proposal Rachel had worked on 6 months ago. I cross-referenced timelines, looked up her travel history, accessed browser history from the iPad she left at the house still logged into her Facebook. The more I found, the less shocked I became. Affairs are predictable. But this wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated. She had been siphoning money from our joint account for months. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Always during times I was distracted, tight deadlines, out-of-town conferences. She was building her escape route right under my nose. But what Rachel forgot was that she married a man who designs intrusion detection systems for a living. I don't just build firewalls, I monitor behavior, pattern deviations, stealth movements. This was no different. I built a folder. Digital and physical. I called it our fallout. Tucked it behind dummy file names on an encrypted drive. Printed key evidence, sealed it in a manila envelope, locked it in my fireproof box. Not because I wanted to use it, but because I knew I might have to. One night, while exporting her call history from the cloud sync, I paused at a series of outgoing calls to a law office. Family law. Over a dozen calls in 3 weeks. She wasn't waiting to see how I'd react, she'd already set the wheels in motion. She thought I'd go down quiet. That was her second mistake. She underestimated what a man can do once he stops begging to be understood. A few days after I discovered the Paris photos, she texted again. I'm sorry if this feels sudden. I didn't want to hurt you. I hope we can keep things respectful. Respectful. That word stuck in my throat like a splinter. She'd gutted our marriage like it was a lease agreement expiring. And now she wanted civility. Clean lines. No mess. But betrayal is never clean. It stains in places you didn't know you had. I didn't respond. Not yet. Not until I understood the game she thought she was playing. Instead, I called Darren. He was a quiet friend, someone I didn't see often but who always answered when it mattered. A divorce attorney. Not flashy, not vindictive. Just sharp. The kind of guy who played chess while the rest of the room played Uno. We met for drinks that night. I laid it all out: Rachel's disappearance, the text, the Paris trip, the financial bleed I'd uncovered. He listened without interrupting, then asked one question. Do you want to win, or do you want closure? I didn't answer right away. Because I knew what closure meant: emotional resolution, peace, some deep exhale that said this is over and I'm okay now. But that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want to scream or burn her life down. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. I wanted her to watch the consequences show up like a shadow she couldn't shake. I want clarity, I said. And control. I'm not interested in revenge porn or setting her car on fire. I want her to understand what it cost. Darren nodded slowly. Then we play the long game. That night, I changed all my passwords. Unlinked the cloud accounts. Transferred the remaining funds from our joint account into a protected trust I'd created 2 years ago for emergencies. She wouldn't be able to access a cent without a court order. I went over every financial detail from the past year: bills, transfers, credit cards. She hadn't just prepared for a breakup. She'd begun erasing her ties to me months ago, moving toward an entirely separate financial identity. It was subtle, clever even, except for one thing. She was sloppy with timing. There were overlaps: payments she forgot to hide, messages she forgot to delete. And once I knew what to look for, I saw it everywhere. A Venmo charge with the pizza place Eric loved. 2 Amex purchases at the same boutique he tagged in his posts. Flight reservations that didn't match her alibis. She never thought I'd go looking. She never imagined I'd track patterns like a crime scene analyst. What she also didn't know was that I had quietly set up a second savings account months ago, just a what-if fund I never mentioned. It wasn't massive, but it meant I wouldn't be cornered. And now I had something else she didn't. Time. She had to maintain her narrative. She had to keep up the lie. Smile for her friends, pretend she was rediscovering herself, post filtered brunch photos with captions like, just breathing again. But I had no story to protect. No image to maintain. I could move in silence. And silence, I was learning, is a powerful kind of pressure. Especially when someone starts to wonder what you know and how long you've known it. A week passed. Then, too. Rachel kept texting every few days, neutral tone, measured language. Like a PR rep managing a crisis she didn't want to name. I'd like us to have a conversation soon. There's no need to make this adversarial. We can divide things amicably. I'm trying to be fair. I didn't reply. Not once. Because the moment you start explaining to someone why they hurt you, you're giving them permission to decide whether it was valid. And I wasn't in the business of offering that anymore. Instead, I let Darren file the preliminary separation documents. Quietly. Strategically. Nothing dramatic, just paperwork that legally froze joint accounts, blocked asset transfers, and set an early line in the sand about what was mine. The next move was subtle but sharp. I contacted the HR department at Rachel's company. Not to gossip. Just to inquire, as a concerned husband, about the nature of her recent business travel, the trip to Paris that, to my knowledge, was booked using a company card. I posed it as a tax-related question. That was all it took. 2 days later, she texted me again. The tone was different now. Did you talk to someone at my office? No smiley face. No soft phrasing. I waited a few hours, then replied with one word. Yes. She didn't respond after that. But I knew she'd be scrambling. Because if her affair with Eric had crossed into professional misconduct, and from what I'd seen, that meant more than just personal fallout. It meant leverage. And I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't throwing darts in the dark. I had receipts, emails, metadata, flight logs, expense reports accidentally uploaded to our shared drive months ago. This wasn't revenge. It was insurance. The next morning, I forwarded the digital evidence to Darren with a note, in case things get ugly. Then I got in my car and drove. Not anywhere in particular, just away. 2 hours north into the woods, no destination. Just space. I parked at a turnout overlooking a lake and sat on the hood of my car, watching the wind push ripples across the water. I wasn't thinking about Rachel. Or Eric. Or how it all went wrong. I was thinking about something my dad once told me when I was 16 and heartbroken over a girl who barely knew I existed. People who lie with ease can't stand silence. It forces them to hear their own echo. I was beginning to understand what he meant. By the time I got back to the city, Darren had left me a voicemail. She's lawyered up, he said. That didn't take long. I smiled. Not because it was over, but because now finally it was real. She'd made her move. And I was just getting started. The first time I saw the official letterhead from Rachel's attorney, it made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so expected. There it was, in stiff legal language, pretending to be reasonable while asking for things that were anything but. She wanted half the house. Half the savings. She even requested a fair share of the post-separation assets, including any future business equity from my cybersecurity work. Bold? What she didn't know, what her lawyer definitely didn't know, was that I'd already moved the bulk of my stock options into a protected account in my brother's name. Not to hide it. Just to delay access. Legally. Strategically. Darren reviewed the letter and raised an eyebrow. She's either misinformed or confident you'll roll over. I'm not rolling over. He nodded. Then let's draw our line. We drafted a formal response. It was calm, clinical, and surgical in its denials. We acknowledged nothing we didn't have to. We denied her access to anything she hadn't earned. And we attached an appendix, a polite list of irregular financial behaviors traced back to her during the last 6 months of our marriage. Every wire transfer. Every hotel receipt. Every Venmo to Eric. Dates. Times. Locations. We didn't accuse. We didn't threaten. We just documented. A few days later, Rachel called. Not text. Not email. A real call, like she forgot who she was pretending to be for a second. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Ethan, can we talk, please? I didn't know you were going to involve lawyers so soon. I thought we could just. I don't know. Do this with some mutual respect. I know things got complicated. I never wanted it to get like this. Complicated. That was the word cheaters always used, wasn't it? Not cruel. Not calculated. Just complicated. I forwarded the voicemail to Darren. He replied, she's flinching. I wasn't surprised. Rachel wasn't built for long wars. She preferred quick cuts, clean breaks, no mess. But I had no interest in dragging her through the mud. I just wanted truth to have teeth. The next step came quietly. We served a formal subpoena for all communications between her and Eric, including messages sent from company email addresses. Darren said it might not hold up, but the request itself was the message. Rachel responded by going silent again. But her lawyer didn't. Their next letter was softer. No mention of post-separation assets. They offered a 60/40th split on the house. Suggested we mediate before escalating. It wasn't an admission of guilt, but it was something better. It was fear. I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair, feeling, for the first time in weeks, like the ground beneath me was solid again. I wasn't out to ruin her. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story either. She'd made her decisions. Now she would sit with them. It started with a rumor. A quiet one, barely a whisper but loud enough to find its way to me through someone who used to work at Rachel's firm. He called me out of the blue, said he didn't want to get involved but thought I should know. There's talk she's being investigated, he said. Something about improper use of company resources. Travel reimbursements. A conflict of interest with a vendor. Vendor. That's what Eric was listed as in her company's internal records, an independent consultant who had just landed a suspiciously generous contract 2 months before the Paris trip. The irony? Rachel had always preached integrity. At work. At home. She used to say the worst kind of people were the ones who abused power to serve themselves. Turns out some mirrors lie. Darren filed a motion to preserve Rachel's electronic communications, phone records, laptop data, and anything stored on her company cloud in case we needed to subpoena it later. We weren't sure how far she was willing to go to protect herself, but we weren't going to wait and find out. Around the same time, I got a package. No return address. Just a padded envelope with a flash drive inside. I plugged it in cautiously and opened the single folder marked FYI. It was a screen recording. 30 minutes long. A Zoom call. Rachel and Eric. I watched, my jaw clenched, as they discussed timing the exit, coordinating the transfer of money, and how to minimize blowback once she filed. She called me predictable, said I'd probably be too stunned to fight back, and joked that I'd probably just throw myself into work and therapy. At one point, Eric laughed and said, as long as he doesn't get curious, we're golden. Curious. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Someone had recorded them, someone inside Eric's team, maybe. Maybe they were just sick of watching him coast on charm and lies. Maybe they had their own reasons. I didn't care. What mattered was what I now had. Proof. Not just of an affair. Not just a betrayal. But of conspiracy. This wasn't just a messy end to a marriage. This was planned. And that changed everything. I forwarded the file to Darren. His response was one sentence: this shifts the leverage entirely. That night, Rachel called again. No voicemail this time. Just a missed call and then a text. I think we need to talk. Please. I didn't respond. But I did screenshot it. And added it to the file. By the next morning, Darren had reached out to her attorney. In short, we knew. We had proof. And we were willing to let the civil courts handle it quietly so long as restitution was made and Rachel withdrew her claim on the house and assets. Otherwise, we'd let the company's ethics board and possibly the SEC take a look. Rachel's response came through her lawyer 3 days later. She was shocked at the accusations. Claimed everything with Eric was personal, not professional. Denied misuse of corporate funds. But here's the thing about denials. They don't carry much weight when you're on tape laughing about how easy it is to deceive someone. The first crack came in the form of an internal audit. I don't know who pulled the trigger, maybe someone in her company's legal department, maybe HR covering their own bases, but within a week of Darren delivering our evidence, Rachel was placed on administrative review. A polite way of saying, we're watching you now. Closely. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. But the signs were easy to read. She stopped texting. No more veiled attempts at civility. No more requests to talk like adults. Just silence. Like she was trying to buy time. Or stop the bleeding. Then came Eric's mistake. He posted a photo. Stupid. Careless. A rooftop bar in Chicago, whiskey in hand, captioned New Chapter. Big things coming. Harmless on its own unless you happen to zoom in and recognize the face sitting across from him. A client. One of Rachel's company's accounts. And just like that, the entire narrative she'd built about keeping things separate evaporated. Darren moved fast. He filed an addendum with the court linking Rachel's personal relationship with Eric to her professional dealings. Attached the video, the financial overlap, the sudden approval of a 6-figure contract to a man with no prior engagement history in their industry. We didn't need to prove criminal intent. Just influence. Just bias. Rachel's attorney called Darren directly this time. Skip the letters. Skip the dance. She's willing to negotiate, he said. But you need to understand she's under a lot of pressure right now. Darren said nothing. So the man tried again. Look, Ethan's made his point. She's in a bad place. Can't we find some middle ground? That word again. Fairness. As if fairness had been on the table when she left me through a text message and hopped a plane to Paris with a man I used to call a friend. As if fairness meant watching her siphon money and rewrite history like I was just a footnote in her personal reinvention. Darren didn't budge. Full forfeiture of spousal claims. Return of transferred assets. A formal statement acknowledging misconduct. Then we talk. There was a long pause on the other end. Then a quiet, resigned. We'll get back to you. Meanwhile, I kept living my life. I'd started running again. Not far, not fast. Just around the park near my apartment. Headphones in, phone on silent. Most nights I'd get back and find a missed call or a new message from some unknown number that turned out to be Rachel. She wasn't demanding anymore. She was unraveling. I never wanted this to go so wrong. You're not who I thought you were. Why are you doing this to me? That one made me laugh out loud. Why am I doing this to her? Rachel hadn't just betrayed me. She tried to outmaneuver me. Emotionally. Legally. Financially. She thought if she smiled through it, if she stayed pretty and polite and just detached enough, it would all float away without consequences. But now the ground was shifting under her feet. Her job was on the line. Her reputation? Fracturing. Eric? Nowhere to be found. His company's site was under construction. His LinkedIn profile was deactivated. He was running. She was cornered. And I was still quiet. Not out of mercy. Out of power. She chose a cafe. Of course she did. One of those airy, glass-walled places with Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood, and overpriced espresso. The kind of place where people pretend nothing serious ever happens, just meetings and lattes and lives held gently. I arrived 5 minutes early. Ordered black coffee. Sat at a table facing the door. I didn't bring anything. No papers. No laptop. Just myself. She needed to see I wasn't carrying weight anymore. She walked in right on time. Rachel looked different. Not disheveled, not dramatic. Just strained. Her expression was guarded, makeup carefully applied to look effortless. The same act I used to find charming now looked like armor. She sat down without a word. There was a pause. A long one. I let it sit. Let the tension do the talking. Finally, she broke it. I'm not here to argue. I nodded. That's good. I'm not here to explain. Her jaw twitched. She folded her hands on the table. I could see the rings were gone, engagement, wedding. Her left hand looked strange without them. I don't know how things got this far, she said. It wasn't supposed to. You left me by text, Rachel, I said quietly. There is no how. Just what? That stunned her. Just for a second. She blinked. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. You did anyway. She swallowed. Her eyes dropped to the table. I made mistakes, she said. But this, what you're doing, it's not fair. My job's on the line. I could lose everything. She looked up and for a moment I saw panic peek through the performance. I sipped my coffee. You thought you could cheat and walk away clean. You thought I'd roll over. That's not true. I leaned in. Then tell me. What was your plan, Rachel? Fly to Paris, hide the money, lie to my face, then pretend you found yourself. I was scared, she said, too fast. I didn't know how to leave. So you burned the house down instead. She didn't deny it. That surprised me. Instead, she exhaled. I know you think I'm this villain, she said, her voice cracking, but I was lost. Eric made me feel seen. Like I mattered again. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. And now? I asked. She looked away. He's gone, she said. Disappeared. I think he used me. I let the silence hang. Let her sit in it. That video, she asked after a moment. The one you sent my lawyer. Where did it come from? I didn't make it, I said. Someone else wanted the truth to come out. I just gave it a home. Tears welled in her eyes. Real ones, maybe? Or well-rehearsed. I couldn't tell anymore. Please, she whispered. Can we fix this without destroying each other? I set my coffee down. Stood up slowly. This is fixing it, I said. She looked up at me like I'd just spoken a language she'd never heard. You don't get to escape this clean, Rachel. You don't get to rewrite the story. Actions have echoes. Yours are still ringing. I turned to leave. Paused. For what it's worth, I said, I hope you figure out who you are without hurting anyone else to do it. She didn't respond. Just sat there, shoulders stiff, eyes wide, watching me walk out the door. And for the first time in this entire mess, I didn't feel small. I felt done. The official letter came a week after the cafe meeting. Rachel had agreed to the terms. No contest. No trial. She forfeited her claim to the house, the savings, the trust account I protected. Darren even pushed through a clause that barred her from touching any future earnings tied to my consulting firm. The clean break she wanted so badly? She got it. but not the way she imagined. That same week, a mutual friend forwarded me an email. Rachel's company had circulated an internal memo about changes in leadership. No names. No drama. But word got around. She'd been asked to resign. There was no public scandal, no headline, but in those circles, word travels. The kind of quiet disgrace that doesn't scream. It hums. For months. For years. As for Eric, he vanished. His company folded, bank accounts frozen mid-investigation. Someone said he skipped town. Another said he was seen trying to pitch a new startup under a different name. It didn't matter. He wasn't my problem anymore. He never really was. Rachel made the choice. He was just the exit she took without looking back. The divorce was finalized a month later. No ceremony. No courtroom drama. Just a stack of papers delivered to Darren's office, signed and sealed. I didn't open the envelope. Didn't need to. It was already done in my mind. The day after, I took the dog I'd adopted, Scout, a rescue mutt with a crooked tail and no sense of personal space, and drove 2 hours out of the city. Found a cabin for sale, tucked at the edge of a lake, surrounded by pine and silence. I bought it on the spot. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even finished. But it was mine. No memories in the walls. No ghosts in the drawers. Just clean air and room to rebuild. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch with Scout curled up at my feet and a beer in hand, staring out at the still water. Wondering how I got here. Wondering how close I'd come to losing myself in someone else's idea of happiness. But most nights, I didn't think about her at all. I got emails sometimes from people I didn't know. Husbands. Veterans. Guys who'd read about what happened. Word had gotten out, bits and pieces shared online through forums and whispers. Not gossip. Solidarity. They said things like, "You said what I couldn't, and thanks for reminding me I wasn't crazy." And one message I still have saved. "You didn't burn her down. You just stopped holding the umbrella while she lit the match." I like that. Because it wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about refusing to disappear. About drawing a line and standing still while someone else finally ran into it. I saw her again, once. 6 months after the divorce. I was at the hardware store buying lumber, bolts, things I couldn't name 6 months earlier but now used like second nature. The cabin was becoming a home slowly. With my hands, not someone else's vision. I was walking toward the register when I heard someone say my name. Soft. Hesitant. I turned and there she was. Rachel. Hair pulled back. No makeup. A grocery basket in her hands filled with small things, light bulbs, a hanging plant, a roll of tape. She looked ordinary. Tired, maybe? Or just real in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be when we were together. "Hey," she said. I nodded. "Rachel. I didn't expect to see you here." "I live nearby," I said. "Well, for now." She looked down, then back up. "I heard about the place. The cabin. It sounds nice." I didn't ask how she knew. People always know things, eventually. "I like it," I said. "It's quiet." She smiled, just barely. Not the practiced kind. The tired, human kind. I was thinking of moving. Starting over somewhere. "You already did," I said. That hung in the air for a second. Not cruel. Just true. She nodded. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "Not just for what I did, but for how I did it. For not having the guts to end things honestly." I didn't speak right away. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wanted the moment to be clean. "You know," I said finally, "for a long time I thought closure would come from answers. From hearing you say something that made it all make sense." She looked up, eyes glassy. "And?" she asked. "And I stopped needing that." Rachel nodded again. Slowly. "I hope you're okay," she said, stepping back. "I really do." I gave a small smile. Nothing forced. "I am." She didn't ask anything else. Didn't reach for a hug or linger too long. She just turned and walked toward the exit, the hanging plant swinging gently in her basket. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No final twist. Just two people who used to share a life, now walking down separate aisles in the same store, both trying to rebuild. I drove back to the cabin that afternoon, Scout's head hanging out the window, wind in his ears. We pulled into the gravel driveway as the sun started sinking behind the pines, casting gold across the roof I'd patched myself last month. Inside, my tools were still spread across the kitchen table. Sawdust in the cracks of the floor. A work in progress. Like me. I made dinner. Poured a glass of whiskey. Sat on the porch and listened to the quiet. Not the lonely kind. The peaceful kind. No buzzing phone. No questions waiting in the shadows. No echo of someone else's lies in the back of my head. Just silence. Stillness. And for the first time in a long time, Freedom.